Yo, I'm Godin and I'm developing a game solo called Silk Road Project, and this month I finally wrapped up the fishing minigame for good. It's done and more polished than I initially planned. Here, have a look at how it looks and sounds. I really pushed the details from the UI to the sound effects, animation, camera work, everything. It took me longer than I expected, but it's all part of creating what's called a vertical slice, taking a small piece of the full game and polishing it to the level of quality I want for the entire project. If you're not familiar with the term vertical slice, it's basically a fully playable chunk of the game that represents your final vision. Gameplay, visuals, UI, sound, everything. It doesn't have to be big, but it has to be representative of the level of quality you wish to attain for the rest of the game. In my case, I chose the fishing minigame for that. As a minigame, it's a self-contained feature that can be worked on its own without depending too much from the rest of the game, which makes it easier for me to push on detailing. Once again, this month, what took me the longest was the UI. Working on minigames turned into an entire learning experience on how Unreal's UI system actually works. I spent a lot of time figuring out how to make everything dynamic, from small animation, transitions and sound effects for better feedback. But I'm happy I went through the pain now because it forced me to build a flexible and robust UI system early on. Since I plan to have quite a few minigames and each of them will need their own menus, prompt and overlays, I'd say it's better to properly think about the UI framework earlier than later. So yeah, it was a struggle, but a very productive one. Another area I kept learning about was music. I'm still trying to familiarize myself with the basics of creating tracks and manipulating samples. For now, I'm not aiming to make the final soundtrack myself. I definitely don't have that level of talent, but the goal is to understand the fundamentals so that I can test my ideas directly in game. Right now, the tracks I make sound pretty amateurish, rough and unpolished, but that's good enough for now. This is just a prototype to test the mood and feel during the gameplay. That would be useful if later down the road I can collaborate with a real composer. It will be much easier to communicate my creative vision instead of saying things like, I want something that sounds like an old school hip hop beat with Central Asian instruments, kind of chill but still energetic enough for action phase, blah blah blah. I can just hand them a rough track and say, this is the kind of thing I had in mind. If you are like me, a novice in the world of music creations, and you're curious to see how I've been approaching it, here's what my current process looks like. The style of music I'm aiming for works really well with a sample-based workflow, so I've been browsing sample libraries for that. I decided to go with Splice, which is a pretty well-known platform. Splice has a super useful tool that lets you preview multiple samples together, automatically adjusting their BPM to match, perfect for beginners like me. From there, I can browse the catalog for samples I want to try, add them to track, or just let Splice randomly pick one for me. In this example, I started with the loop of a Chinese instrument, then layered a hip-hop drum beat and some jazzy loops on top. Once I've found loops that fit nicely together, I import them all into a music creation software. I'm using FL Studio and start mixing, tweaking and chopping the samples until I'm happy with the result. It's nothing fancy, but it's enough to create something a bit more personal than just using a pre-made track from a marketplace. And now that the fishing minigame is fully done, it's time to move on to the next minigame. The storytelling minigame, the third gameplay type. This one happens around a bonfire and it's going to be based on a simplified deck builder mechanic. So here's the structure I'm going for across all minigames. Cooking uses a Tetris-like gameplay system. Fishing is built on a turn-based JRPG battle system, and storytelling will use a deck builder system. Every other minigame in the game, like hunting, farming or tea serving, would be a variation of one of these three gameplays with small tweaks and different animations. That's where I can keep things fresh for the player while keeping my workload under control as a solo dev. It's a modular approach where I design 3 different gameplay that I can then reskin to create a lot of variety without reinventing the wheel every time. And that's it for this month. The fishing minigame is done, the UI system is stronger than ever, and I've kept dipping my toes into the world of music production. Next month, hopefully, I'll be diving into the final of the 3 core minigames, the storytelling one. So yeah, the Silk Road project is moving forward, one minigame at a time. If you'd like to support the project, please consider wishlisting it on Steam. It helps me a ton and really keeps the motivation going. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for updates, and as always, I'll see you next month. Bye.